Hello and welcome back. So we've already talked about a physical change and what it is. Remember, it was like if you break a pencil, if you cut a piece of paper, if we did any of our phase changes from a solid liquid to a gas, those were all physical changes. So now we're going to talk about chemical changes. So when we look at a chemical change, they are changes that cause the chemical bonds to break in a substance. So in simple words, chemical changes are really chemical reactions that are taking place. So chemical changes occur when two different substances react with each other. And here's the key, guys. They're going to form something totally new, a new substance. The ingredients of a reaction we're going to call the reactants. So that's what you're going to start with. And then the new substances that are formed are called the products. So again, we have a chemical reaction. And we have the reactants is what we begin with, and the products are what we end with. So here's some examples of a chemical change. One, when you cook food. So if you think about it, if you cook an egg, is it exactly the same as it was when before and after? Can you take it back to what it started with? So when we cook an egg, or when you break an egg, you look at it, and yes, it is yellow and it is clear. But in the end of it, it's no longer clear, it's white, and the yellow becomes darker color. Okay, so frying an egg is definitely going to be, because I couldn't take it back and put it back in the shell, okay, once we fried it. So another example would be the rotting of something. Again, when food, bread, or anything that's been cooked rots, that had to have a chemical process takes down. So in other words, what we're talking about, the bonds there are broken. They become degraded in the substance. And we know that a ripe apple and a rotten apple are going to be two different things. They're going to taste totally different. We're not going to be able to take a rotten apple and go back to a ripe apple. So it completely changed. Rusting of iron, that's a good one, and you've probably seen that before. So when an iron nail is exposed to the air or oxygen, and we call it an oxidation. So it oxidizes, it changes its color. It goes from maybe a shiny to reddish orange. We know that's called rust. So when we talk about something rusting, it is a chemical change. Burning of a candle. Again, when you burn a candle, it takes carbon dioxide and water molecules are released. Okay, you see that in the form of light, and we'll talk more about that in just a minute of all the evidences. So when we looked at, let's say, the iron rusting, we saw a change in color. Okay, here we saw also a change in color, but maybe even also a change in the shape of it, the texture of it. Okay, here we see light being given off, heat probably being given off. Change in color of a substance. So when two transparent liquids are mixed and a colored product is formed, it is considered to be a chemical change. So we definitely notice a difference. So if I mix two transparent liquids, two clear liquids, if you want to think of it that way, and maybe they turn blue, we know a chemical reaction had to happen. Now, don't confuse that with if you take like water and let's say tea or coffee and you put them together. Okay, that again is a mixture. Combustion, burning of gases, fuel, wood, or charcoal. Examples of combustion process where the soot, the carbon dioxide, and the water are released. And you probably know that if you take and you burn wood, you're not going to be able to get it back. And it comes black, it comes ash. It gives off again heat and light. So here are the final properties of a chemical change. You need to remember, chemical changes are irreversible. If you remember physical changes, we said we could reverse. If you put sand and salt together, or sand and iron filings together, then you separate them, we can just dump them back together. Okay, but chemical changes are irreversible. Chemical changes lead to a change in color, a change in temperature, and a change in smell. Okay, so color would be the rusting of the iron. Change in temperature would be the burning of the candle. Change in smell would be that apple rotting. Okay. Third one, new substances are formed during a chemical change. And if you'll remember, we talked about the beginning part was the reactants. The product, or what is formed, is so remember we talked about in a chemical change, the reactants are what goes into it, and then what it forms, that new substance, is called the products. You're going to have to remember those two words. Chemical changes may lead to light. We might see light being given off. We might be seeing sound produced. That might be like a gas exploding. We might see a release of gas. That sometimes in our lab you have to be very careful with, because what you'll see is little bubbles being given off in the form of a gas. They're not going to be huge in the lab that we're going to see, so you're really going to have to watch for that release of gas. And again, a release of heat. And a lot of times you can feel that. Sometimes we have to put in a thermometer to see a change in temperature. And the final one is chemical changes may lead to the formation of a precipitate. And when we talk about a precipitate, that's basically, sometimes students will refer to that as it formed like little chunkies in the solution, or the substance. And I'll show you a picture of that in just a minute. Okay, so take a minute, think about this. If you had to label the following as whether it was a physical change or a chemical change. So hopefully you said that boiling of an egg was a chemical change, because again, a boiled egg is not the same as the original egg. We can't go back. Melting, though, is physical. So boiling was chemical, melting is physical, and breaking, again, is just physical. Okay, so again, we're going to do a quick review about chemical properties and then the chemical changes. So remember, there was a video about chemical properties, and the chemical properties relates to the substance ability to undergo change that transforms it into different substances. And we had a long list that we had of chemical properties earlier on, like flammability was being one. So a change in which one or more substances are converted into different substances is called, again, a chemical change or a chemical reaction, just as a review. Remember, the reactants are the substances that go into the chemical change. The products are what is formed. An example would be carbon dioxide plus oxygen yields or forms carbon dioxide. And so this would be what it would look like in a word equation.